Hello and welcome to my video tutorial all about how to make a paper and wire daisy. To make a daisy you will need some wire. In this case I have some armature wire, which is just aluminium wire with a diameter of 1.6 millimeters. Aluminium is a good choice because it's really easy to shape. Because you're using wire, you'll also need some wire pliers for a little bit of shaping and some wire cutters. You'll also need some green floral tape, some yellow thin card or paper, some book pages, you'll probably need only a couple, some PVA glue, in this case I'm using Aleene's tacky glue, some scissors, and you'll also need a pencil. So let's get started. The first thing you need to do is get one book page and cut off the white border. Make sure you choose a book page that has text on both sides and no big gaps. If you've seen my previous videos about how to make paper roses and lilies, then this process will be familiar to you. You will now want to turn this rectangle into two square shapes. So to do this, cut the larger rectangle in half to give you two smaller rectangles. Then fold each of these rectangles diagonally. Then cut off the unfolded excess paper to give you two square shapes. You then need to fold each of these triangles twice more along the longest edge. So just fold it in half once so that the fold is central to the longest edge and the corners meet, and then you do exactly the same. You might recognise this process from making snowflakes when you were at school. So now you have folded edges on the bottom left and the bottom right, whilst the top has the open edges. You then need to cut an arc shape across this open edge. What you want is a symmetrical cone shape with a rounded top. Make sure it's nice and neat and not wonky, and then you're going to move on to cutting out the daisy shape. I'm just going to use a pen to draw out the line you'll now have to cut. If you would like to draw out a template before you cut it, then I advise using a pencil and then erasing it later on, otherwise you'll have marks all over your daisy. I'm just using this pen line for guidance because it shows up better on a video and it shows you what kind of shape you're after. So basically I'm drawing 3 petals, or rather 1 petal in the centre and then 2 half petals on either side. So the half petal should be about half the size of the central one, and try and make the cuts as symmetrical as possible. You can either cut this shape by eye, draw a faint pencil line for guidance, or you can make one as an experiment or a test run and then use one you're happy with as a template for more daisy shapes. So once you're happy, just cut out the daisy shape. If you're not happy with the shape once you open it up, you can always fold it back up again and make the changes you want. You then do exactly the same with the other cone shape you've made. So you'll end up with 2 daisy shapes. Here I am demonstrating how you would use a previously cut shape as a template. I then like to go over the fold lines to fold them all in the same direction, just so it looks a lot neater and a lot more symmetrical. The next step is to make the central section of the daisy, which consists of 2 circles of yellow card or paper. You need to cut out 2 circle shapes so that they're in proportion with the paper daisy shapes you've already cut out. and you want one circle slightly bigger than the other. I find the easiest way to cut out a circle is to first cut out a square and then just take the corners off to make the circle shape. I then like to add a bit of fringing around the circles with my scissors, just to add a bit of texture and interest. Then we move on to making the wire stem. You'll have to judge the length by eye and try and make it in proportion with the size of your daisy. The length of wire I used was about 9.5 inches or 24 centimeters long, but you might be using a different size of book page and so will have a different size of daisy, so you just have to cut a piece of wire that you think looks good. Try and cut the wire a little bit bigger than you think you want, because you can always cut it down to size later. Straighten any kinks out of the wire. And then you're going to use your pliers to make a kind of flat loop or spiral shape at one end. So just wrap the wire around your pliers to form a small loop, and then bend it at a right angle. So you then glue the wire loop onto the smallest yellow circle that you cut out earlier. I used PVA glue for this because the join doesn't have to be strong, however I did use quite a bit of glue, just to make sure. I then cut a small hole in the centre of the larger yellow circle, as well as the two paper daisy shapes. These holes don't have to be big, they just have to allow the wire to go through the centre. So you then feed all of the shapes onto the wire before adding glue between each of the shapes to fix them in place. So I push the larger yellow circle upwards into the glue that's on the bottom of the wire loop. I then add a little bit of glue on top of the first daisy shape and push that up onto the yellow circle. And then I add a little bit more glue between the two daisy shapes. You don't need to use much glue, just enough to fix the shapes in place. I then added a little bit more glue onto the wire underneath the final daisy shape, just to stop them sliding down the wire. Then leave the glue to dry. Next, you will need to cover the wire stem. Now you can do this in a few different ways. You could paint the wire. You could wrap fabric or paper strips around the wire with glue, or you could do as I'm going to do and just use floral tape to wrap around the wire. This is a really quick and easy method to cover up the wire stem, and all you have to do is take the end of the tape and pinch it around the wire just below the flower, and then just continue wrapping the tape around the stem until it's all covered. And then, once you've finished the stem, you've finished the daisy. You can then make plenty more of these to make a bouquet, or just keep this one displayed in a bud vase. I really hope you've enjoyed making this daisy, and thank you very much for watching.